Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, we're going to be talking about baseball as I am joined by indie movie producer Bill Mikita. Bill had a film come out in 2007 called Chasing 3000. So we're going to be talking to him about the story surrounding that and why it was called that. He has a new film coming out. We're going to be talking about that and letting him describe that and why he decided to make it. Bill is how can I say this? Bill is a real big baseball fan, and I'm a baseball fan as well. So he uses baseball movies, to tell inspiring stories. So Bill, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Curtis, for having me on. It's a privilege and honor to be here with you this evening.
Well, why don't you start off telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Oh, absolutely. So, I am an attorney by education and by profession, and I'm married. I have 4 adult children. I have 11 grandchildren, and I started this journey quite a while ago, and many years ago. My mother died of a brain tumor. It was a short illness, and she was 60 years old, and I was half her age. And so I thought, what if half of my life is over? What did I want to do with my life? And I wanted to write, but I had never expressed it to anyone. And so I had a friend who, and I lived in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I had a friend that got a job at Disney, and named Rick Haskins, and I flew out to and spent some time with Rick, and he introduced me to a few producers. One of them was a producer named Barry Bernardi, interesting guy. He's got a lot of credits, and he said, "Well, Bill, there's 2 ways to get into the movie business. One is to start as a gopher and work your way up." And I thought, well, I'm 30 years old. I have a pregnant wife and 2 daughters. I hope option B is better than that. And he said, "You have something that we want, and we will pay you for it." And so I spent the rest of the day driving around LA thinking to myself, what did I have that no one else had? And I had a very interesting life growing up. I had a brother who was disabled. We were very close. My brother Steve was born with a rare form of muscular dystrophy called spinal muscular atrophy. And I thought, what if I wrote a story about my brother and me? And so at the time, I bought books about how to write a screenplay. And I wrote a very autobiographical story. Very autobiographical. It wasn't terribly good, and it was crudely written. But I got some attention from 1 or 2 producers. And one of them said, the only reason we're talking, Bill, is I feel your passion for this story. And so I almost sold it as an after-school special. I don't know if you remember those back in the day. And so it gave me the encouragement to keep writing. And so that's what I did. I started to write screenplays, and I wrote 2 or 3 screenplays. And then what I did is I went back to my original story, and I put in a hook. The hook was that the brothers, go to see Roberto Clemente, their hero, get his 3000th hit. And that's the inspiration that I started to write then. I wrote the screenplay called Chasing 3000. and it's about these two brothers who take off in 1972 a cross-country trip and a race against time to see their hero, Roberto Clemente, get his 3,000th hit. And along the way, the brothers learn the importance of it, about being brothers.
Okay, so tell us about the film Chasing 3000.
Sure. So what happened is I wrote the original draft, and I I I tried to pitch it, or I did pitch it, I should say, and uh, tried to get it made. And no one told me they didn't like the film, but or I should say the screenplay. But the feedback I was getting was it was too small of a picture, meaning I learned it at the time as a screenwriter, meaning that it didn't appeal to enough people. It didn't have a broad enough appeal. And so I met a young writer, uh, uh, actor named Chris D'Annunzio. And Chris said, I really like your screenplay, Bill, but I think it needs to be bigger. And so what we did is over a 4th of July weekend, a long weekend, we locked ourselves in a room on the Warner Brothers lot, and we rewrote Chasing 3000. And we made it a bigger story, meaning that we created a bigger trip for the boys to travel across the country. We made the stakes higher, and we put in some elements to make the story more interesting. And so with that draft, that's the draft you see on the screen. We took it out and tried to sell it. And I still wasn't having success in selling it. And one morning I woke up and I just told my wife, I know people with money. I'm gonna raise the money myself. So I went out and I talked to people, friends who were very wealthy. I talked to money people who were hedge fund people, finance people, and some people were interested in the idea. Some people weren't. But I had a friend who was very interested, and he said, I think we might have some investors who have an appetite for this kind of investment. And so I had a young producer named Ryan Johnson, who always loved the screenplay. He became familiar with it when I had another screenplay, a story called Downward Rush. It was a helicopter action picture, and I pitched it to Mandalay Pictures, a Mandalay company, and they passed on it. But Ryan at the time was the development person, and he read Chasing 3000. He loved it, but it wasn't right for Mandalay. But when Ryan went out on his own as a producer, he took the screenplay with him. And so I reached out to Ryan, and I said to him, what if I told you I had Chasing 3000 and $200,000? And he said, well, I would tell you we can make that movie. And so that really wasn't true, and that we were going to need more, but it gave me again it lit a fire under me to go back, and I was able to raise $700,000, and we were going to make it at a time of it was going to be a small movie, a direct-to-video movie back in the Blockbuster days, and so it was going to be a small release. And Ryan lived in Marina Del Rey, near a manager, and the manager, one of the people she managed was Ray Liotta, and so the manager got the screenplay to Ray Liotta, and we were less than a week away from filming in Pittsburgh, and we still did not have the lead cast, and Ray Liotta committed to the movie. And then then we became something big. But because of what we had $700,000, we were going to have to hire Ray. That $700,000 was going to go rather quickly. So we were able to go back to the investors and to get, and also got a loan, and we were able to raise 1.2 million for a total of 1.9 million to shoot the movie. And so we shot it for 4 days in Pittsburgh and about 24-day shoot in LA with scenes doubling for the boys crossing the country in this road trip. And so that's the story. That's basically the story based on my brother and me and our hero Roberto Clemente.
So talk about the other cast members that were also in the film, as well as Ray Liotta.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, because with Ray Liotta committing to the film, a lot of actors wanted to be in the movie because they wanted to be in a Ray Liotta movie, even though they may not have scenes with him. But we have Keith David. In fact, the film opens with a scene with Ray Liotta and Keith David, a great scene, and that sort of sets the emotional tone for the entire story. So Keith David is in the movie, and we got Lauren Holly. The younger version of the boys were played by Trevor Morgan and Rory Culkin, and we had Emmett Walsh and Lori Petty. We just had an incredible cast, and Seymour Cassell plays the grandfather role, and people couldn't believe the cast we were able to secure, but largely because of Ray Liotta.
So why is it important to check out or be aware of pivotal sports moments in the 21st century?
Okay, everybody, it's Michael E. Cullen II.
And I'm Sesame and Carta from the All Too Real 2 podcast. We're passionate about movies, TV, and pretty much all things pop culture.
Dive into the chaos of failed sitcoms, direct-to-video sequels, and the quirky realms of cinema and TV.
Join us every Thursday for your dose of All Too Real 2 entertainment.
We'll guide you through debates like whether Howard the Duck qualifies as a superhero.
Ponder if Larry the Cable Guy could be the new Rock or Schwarzenegger.
Discover if some shows and movies should have stayed in the cutting room.
Ever heard of a sitcom featuring that dictator with the funny mustache? Well, we watched it.
We're dedicated to unraveling the peculiarities of pop culture, sometimes with awesome guests.
So, if you're into the eccentric world of pop culture,
listen and subscribe to All Too Real 2.
Available wherever you find podcasts
and on Age of Radio.
Well, that's an interesting question. For me, we seem to be such a divided nation anymore, and we concentrate on things that divide us instead of things that bring us together. And baseball is one of those things in the history of our country, I think, that has always brought us together. Roberto Clemente, in my mind, I grew up near Pittsburgh. He was the greatest right fielder of all time. And he was a five-tool player before that term became popular. And to see him play as often as we did, and what he meant to us, especially the children of my generation, growing up in the 60s and the 70s, I think people need to know about Roberto Clemente and the impact that he had on these two brothers. And he was a great man. I often say Roberto Clemente would have been great at anything he did, whether he was a doctor or a teacher, a minister, whatever he chose to go into. He had greatness in him, and he was a humanitarian. And when we shot in Pittsburgh, you would be amazed at everyone who, once they knew we were making this movie, people would share with us a Roberto Clemente story, whether it was the doorman at the hotel or a CEO of the bank, and they were all positive stories. He was truly a great man. And one of the highlights of my life was sitting down in Pittsburgh at a game in the Pirate Box when I met his widow, Vera, and I got getting her blessing to make the movie. It was one of the highlights of my life. And so
Well,
I guess,
go ahead. Sorry.
I'm
Go
sorry, I
ahead.
guess that I'm not sure I answered your question in that, well, that fully, but I guess uh, I think the reason we need to reflect on not only that baseball unites us, but to see how far we've come as a people, as a nation, and you know, um, my two grandfathers were immigrants from Eastern Europe. All my grandparents were immigrants, and they became American citizens, and they loved everything about America, including baseball, which is fascinating. And so it's I know the sport is fading a little bit, unfortunately, with I think the younger generation, but I would love to keep it alive, to be a part of that because I think it is an important part of our history.
Well, speaking about important part of history, talk about how, why it's important to get stories that are commercially, but are also socially impactful as well.
Well, you know, you've brought up an interesting point, and I shared this in another podcast uh, in the last month or two, and that is there are a lot of movies that are made. I call them film festival movies, movies that are very good, but they don't have a broad enough appeal. And um, you know, if you make a movie, I believe you need to make a movie that is going to get an audience, and also because of that can get distribution. And to be able to get a distributor is key in filmmaking. And so the bigger the story, the bigger the stakes, the more impactful the message is going to be. And I think you see that in baseball movies more than any other sports movies. Somehow baseball is analogous to life. I don't know how necessarily in every way, but that's my theory is that baseball is really presents this I don't this hope. There's always tomorrow, right? There's always another game. Um, you don't have to wait a week for your game. You've got another one the next day, and that's life. Sometimes we have a bad day. Hey, we you know we got it tomorrow. We got another day tomorrow. Let's make it a better day. And I think the younger generation needs to know not only the struggles that um, players had who may be African American or Latin players. Certainly, Roberto Clemente had a dual bias to overcome, and he did not only what uh, because he was a black player, but having Spanish as his first language, it was difficult for him. Today, it's he is the most important player, the most important Latin player. He wasn't the first, but he is absolutely the most impactful Latin player in the game, and he is revered greatly throughout all of Latin America, and so. But also, he had that same impact on us growing up in Pittsburgh, and I think the younger generation needs to know that it's important to keep those stories alive.
Well, let's talk about your new film, Brewer's Boy. So kind of tell
Yeah,
us about that when it's coming out and talk about the timely release of the film, because baseball just recently you talked about, Roberto being black, but they've introduced the Negro League records as well. So tell us about that.
yeah. And so we haven't shot the film yet. So we're still looking to cast the movie and get our director. I've written the screenplay. We secured some money. We're looking for a distributor. But this is uh, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, baseball movie that you don't know about. And so what happened is when Chasing 3000 came out, it was around the time of Facebook. And people would reach out to me or my brother and say, "Hey, are you the Bill Mikita that made this movie?" And one morning I had a message from someone and said, "Hey, I saw your movie last night. I really loved it." I thanked him and I asked him, I said, "Go ahead and send me a friend request." And he did and sent me a message. He said, "I have a great idea for a movie." And as you know, some people do, some people don't. But I gave him a call and we chatted, and he said, "I played on the greatest high school baseball team of all time." I said, "Really?" "Yeah." He said, We won the LA Municipal League in 1965 during the Watts riots." I said, "So the city was in turmoil?" "Yeah." "The city was burning around you?" "Yeah." "And you played a baseball game?" "Yeah." "I'm in already, right?" And so I said, "Well, just out of curiosity, who was on your team?" And he said, "Well, there was Reggie Smith, Bobby Tolan, Bob Watson, Doc Ellis." "Whoa, whoa, whoa, time out. You're telling me all these future major leaguers were on your team?" "Yeah." "And Dennis Gilbert?" You mean the Dennis Gilbert who just tried to buy the Los Angeles Dodgers, Dennis Gilbert?" "Yeah." "Short white guy?" "Yeah." "So you were an integrated team?" "Yeah." And our coach was this really inspirational guy named Chet Brewer, and he was a pitcher in the Negro Leagues, and he was a father figure to us and a mentor, and he kept us out of trouble, and he taught us about baseball. And I said, wow, I, I, I'm blown away. And by the way, our 9-year-old bat boy was Eddie Murray. I said, "You mean the greatest switch hitting first baseman of all time?" "Yeah." "He was your bat boy?" "Yeah." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So I did my homework. I saw all these guys grew up in South Central Los Angeles, and so I optioned the story, and I got to meet some of these players. I got to meet Dennis Gilbert and Bobby Tolan, Bob Watson, and they were gracious, and they shared this more of the story with me as I took notes, and the story just kept getting bigger. And they said one day we came to practice, and this tall, lanky gentleman was teaching Doc Ellis how to throw a curveball. It was Satchel Paige. And I said, did you have trouble beating a certain team?" "Yeah." "Who was their pitcher?" "Raleigh Fingers." And they said, there was this 24-year-old scout who came to all of our games. We called him Tommy. "Tommy Lasorda?" "Yeah, Tommy Lasorda." And, and then they said, "Oh, to this day, we still tease this guy who was a skinny kid who never made any chess teams. His name, Ozzie Smith." And it is unbelievable. So Chet Brewer is the greatest baseball guy you've never heard of. Chet Brewer coached 24 future major leaguers. And it is an incredible story. And it is, I have a theory that I've developed living with this story and writing my screenplay, that this was right before the influx of all the great Latin players. Anyone who was anyone came out of LA. Southern California was the nexus of the baseball world. It's just fascinating. All these great players came out of LA. And so, we have this incredible story about Chet Brewer. And to your point, the all of these statistics, all the players have now been recognized by Major League Baseball. And I believe Chet Brewer, he was a pitcher in the Negro Leagues. He actually beat Satchel Paige with a 1-0 no-hitter in his career. But, he's not in the Hall of Fame. Chet is not. And I think he's deserving of that. And one of my motivations to get this movie made is to get Chet Brewer in the Hall of Fame. He was, again, fascinatingly enough, like Roberto Clemente, he was a transformative figure. He influenced baseball and the lives of these players to a degree that influenced the entire league. If you remember, Doc Ellis pitched that no-hitter, and the famous no-hitter when he was on LSD, and he gave the game ball to Chet Brewer. That's what he meant to these players, and so we're working on getting distribution, and we're hoping to get it into production by the end of the year. But that's where we're at with that story.
Wow. Well, I definitely hope you can. What else are you working on that listeners need to be aware of besides the movie?
Well, I have a a pilot that I've written for a TV project called American Heroes, and it's based on the 442nd. I don't know if you know anything about the 442nd, but another fascinating story that they were made up completely of Japanese American soldiers, and they fought bravely in Europe, mostly in Italy and France, and they were the high. They were the highest. I think they had the most Purple Hearts, but they also had 22 Medal of Honor winners. And so it would be a limited series, about 8 episodes. In each episode, we would tell the story of this incredible group of soldiers during World War II, while their families were interned back here in America. They fought very bravely for their country, and had the highest number of Medal of Honor winners of any battalion.
Yeah, I have heard of them. That's great. I definitely hope that comes out as well.
Yeah, so we're working on that, but it's it's not easy to make independent movies. It's just as you well know, it's just it can be it's a challenge, but I learned a lot. Chasing 3000 was the first film that I made, and we're like a lot of things in life. My brother, I didn't have an opportunity to share with you the story of my brother, because he died less than 2 years ago, but he had so it's a painful it's a sort of a hole in my life. But Steve lived, talking about inspirational characters. Steve lived this incredible life. He thrived, even though he was disabled and lived in a wheelchair all his life. And most of these children that have spinal muscular atrophy never lived to be 18. And my brother lived to be 65. He was the oldest person they knew of who had it. And he was the first wheelchair student at Duke University, and he was an absolutely just a miracle of a baby, of a person growing up. But he also was this inspirational person in people's lives, in my life, in my family's life, in his friend's life, and to excel as he did. With everything that he had to overcome, it was truly just incredible.
Absolutely. And my condolences to you for your loss.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, so we can keep up with everything that you're up to. Throw out your contact information and also tell us where we can watch Jason 3000.
Okay, yeah, you can get Chasing 3000 on Amazon, on Tubi. I think it's on YouTube, and so you can get it on those stream. There's maybe one or two other. I think it's Roku on Roku, so you can get it on those all of those streaming platforms. And I'd love for you to watch the film. I think you'll love it. It's a family-friendly film, and as well as I do, there's not a lot of those out there anymore. But it's something where you can sit down with as a family and watch. And I think you'll be inspired by the story of these brothers and of Roberto Clemente. But you can find me on Facebook, on Instagram, on X, and Bill Mikita, Mikita, and I'm just grateful for this opportunity, Chris.
Yeah, because I definitely want to check out that new film when it comes out.
I'll keep you informed. We're looking at, we are looking for some equity. So if we're looking for a producing partner. So if you have within your listening audience other producers who are interested in projects, we are looking for some additional equity and a producing partner to get us over the finish line.
Well, definitely. So listeners, there you go. So make sure you share it to everybody, and we try to get Bill some more equity. We'll close this out with some final thoughts. Maybe if that was something I forgot to talk about that you would like to touch on, or any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
Just, don't give up. It took me 15 years as a writer, which sounds like a long time, and it is. And, I was married and had children and you face, I faced a lot of rejection. You do as a writer, and you do in Hollywood, of course. But I was just determined to get this movie made, and it's too many people will tell you that you can't do something, and I learned through this experience that I had a vision of what I knew I could do, and so my attitude was either you're going to help me or you're going to get out of my way. And as the more I did it, the more impatient I got with people that weren't going to help me, that were there just to simply say, "Well, Bill, you can't do what you're doing," and and so I guess my last thought to your audience would be is to simply keep moving forward with your vision.
Absolutely, ladies and gentlemen, keep moving forward with your vision, and please be sure to follow, rate, review, share this to everybody. Let's try to help Bill get some more equity, and jump on your favorite podcast app, leave us a review, follow us, share the show. If you have any guests or suggestion topics, Curtis Jackson 1978 at att.net is the place to send them. Bill, thank you for all that you're doing, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, sir. You're very gracious. I'm glad I had this opportunity to talk to you.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.